All right, folks, today we're going to work on an introduction to linear perspective. Linear perspective is a drawing technique that is used to create the illusions of three-dimensional space on a two-dimensional surface. So, what we're going to do is we're going to need a pencil, a straight edge of some kind. You can use a ruler, which would be the best, but you don't have to measure, so if you just have some type of straight edge, that will work as well. All right, so it's a mathematical formula that was discovered by Filippo Brunelleschi in the 15th century. They think that people were working on this technique as early as ancient Greece because you can see it in some of the paintings, but the way that they unified it into a mathematical formula happened in the 15th century. And what was happening is Brunelleschi was checking a lot of the lines on a building that he had been commissioned to design to make sure that the masons were doing their job correctly. And as he checked all these lines on their grout lines and on the edges of the buildings and all, he figured out that there was a mathematical formula to reproduce the look of that three-dimensional object on a two-dimensional surface. So the first thing that we have to establish with one-point perspective is we have to create a relationship with the objects that we are going to draw. Now, I'm going to make my lines rather dark here so that you can see it on the video, but I want you to practice making them light, because some of them you're going to pull back out of this drawing. You're just using them for the sake of creating the drawing. So this line I've put across the middle of the paper is going to represent our eye level. And it's called the horizon line. So now we understand when we're drawing an object, is it at eye level, is it above, or is it below? The next thing that we need is we need to have a relationship to the object going this direction. So we're going to put a dot here and we're going to call this the vanishing point. And what that is that's the center of our vision. Right between the eyes. That's what I tell the kids. So if I'm drawing an interior of a room and I'm way off to one side of the room, I can move that dot over here. This dot will always stay on that line because we can't separate our eye level from the middle of our vision. They're both the same place. So this line can go up and down on the paper. This dot can go back and forth, but they will always intersect. All right, so we're going to start off with 1 point perspective exterior. Now, when we're looking at exteriors, we're looking at the outside of an object. So if this is the object I'm drawing, we're looking at this front face surface first. 1 point perspective is always a face view. 2 point perspective, we'll cover later, is always a corner view. So between the two, we'll be able to draw an object in space however we see it and however we're positioned to it. So we're always going to start with that front face. If I have an object that sits dead center in my vision at eye level, you're going to see one plane. Now, if I move it off over to the side here, now I've moved this object off to the left of my vision. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with that front face. We always start with the face closest to us. And then I'm going to draw what's called a convergent line back to the vanishing point. And these are the ones you want to practice making light, but I'm going to make them dark so that you can see them on here. And I'm going to draw one of these convergent lines back from every corner of that object that I can without passing through the object. So I have two that allow me to draw back to the point without going through the object. So we have our front face, we have our convergent lines. So what we do now, here's our front face, we have to establish the side. So I'm going to slide straight back, because if the front of the object's straight up and down on the corner, then the back of the object has to be too. Now we see what this object looks like if it's off to the left of our vision at eye level. And if we want to do the same thing over here, we can do so. I suggest you use your ruler to make these boxes. I'm just doing it so that quickly here so that you don't have to watch it hour-long video. I have two corners that I can bring back, so I'm going to do that with convergent lines. And then I'm going to establish my parallel. Parallel meaning if these two lines extended out into infinity, they would never intersect. So they have to be straight up and down parallel to each other. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to start talking about if it's below or above vision. So if I go directly below the center of my vision with another one of these cubes or rectangular prisms that we're creating, I still have two corners that I can draw back to the vanishing point with. Now, instead of seeing the sides, this object's in the center and below. So if this is straight across here, the back of the object has to be parallel. So we have off to either side and below our vision. And if you want to see what it'd look like to have one above our vision, we can just turn the paper upside down, because that's what it would look like to see the bottom in front of the object. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to drop one way off over here in the corner. And this is going to be below eye level and off to the left. So now we have 1, 2, 3 corners that we can draw convergent lines back from. Make sure you line them up, guys. If you do not line them up, it does not look right when you're done. And if you do not get your parallels in correctly, your rectangular prisms start to have some issues. All right, so our convergent lines here and here define the top plane, front, top, side. So between these two lines, this is a horizontal line. I'm going to go straight up from that. Make a parallel line just between those two lines here, these two convergent lines, because that's the top plane. When we get to these two, in between these two, we have a vertical line because that's defining our side. All right, so this is what our object looks like if it's below our vision and off to the side. Now we have the front, top, and side plane. So let's do one more right up here. Once again, I'd use the ruler to get nice crisp lines on these because it'll make it a lot easier to bring everything back. All right, I have 3 corners that I can draw convergent lines back from without going through the object itself. We're going to line up to the side plane here with our vertical line, and we're going to put in a parallel line. Only between these two here, because that's the side plane. We have the bottom plane here, which has a horizontal line. Guys, in this drawing, there'll only be 3 types of lines for the whole drawing. You either have horizontal, vertical, or what's called convergent. And they are called convergent lines because these diagonal lines all converge or come together at the vanishing point. So this is 1-point perspective exterior. This is what I want you to turn into me with all the labels and the objects within, and this label at the top. Easy credit, you give me this right here. All right, so we're going to move on to the second part of 1-point perspective now, and it is called 1-point perspective interior. So we're going to learn both formulas today, interior and exterior. We have to start with our same horizon line. I'm going to move it up the page a little bit this time, and you'll see why here in just a little bit. But there's my horizon line. Let's label it again. The horizon line is where our eye level is at. And then we have our vanishing point, which we're just going to abbreviate on this side. That is our center of vision again. Now, with interior, what we're looking at, on exterior, we looked at this closest surface to us. On interior, we're looking at this furthest away surface that's square to us right here. So, if we try to start putting things way below or above our vision in this, what happens is that we have to start adding extra points. So for the purposes of what we're doing today, we're going to put ourselves a rectangle right here, pretty much straddling the horizon line. Notice that I'm using my ruler to set this up. It'll be a lot easier that way. All right, now here's the trick. Line up the point and the corner of the rectangle you just drew, like this right here, and start at that corner and go outward. You don't need to put it on the inside, just the outside of the rectangle. Line up my point and my corner, draw it back. Line up the point and the corner, draw back, and the fourth one. So what we've done here is we have created a floor, ceiling, and 3 walls. The 4th wall would be back behind us in our point of view. All right, so this is our interior. We're going to start talking about how to put things on the walls of this interior. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at this wall surface right here. This back wall that's facing right towards me has 2 types of lines, horizontal and vertical. Those are the 2 types of lines you'll use when you're drawing on this surface. So if I wanted to put a doorway in here, I'm going to draw my vertical lines and my horizontal line. I'm also going to keep in mind that this is my eye level. So if my door is way down here, we have a 2-foot door that we're going to have to crawl through. So if I come over to this wall surface here, the 2 things we see as far as line types is vertical and convergent. So anything we put on this wall will either be vertical, or we're putting a window in here. So once again, I'm going to make sure that that window is at eye level where we can actually see out of it. The top and bottom of the window are going to be convergent, just like it is on the wall plane itself. And then I'm going to put in a parallel line that's going to show my window opening here on this. If I move over to this side here, it's the same thing, folks. Vertical or convergent. So I've put something on each wall surface here, kind of experimenting with it. And when we get better with it, we'll try to play around with these a little bit more. And what I mean by that is like this window here, I can put in a back rectangle, line up that corner and the dot and draw back on both sides. And that gives us some depth to our windowsill. If I'm doing anything on the floor surface that's flat, let's say a rug, it's either horizontal or it's convergent. Now, to get the other part of this rug, I would come from this point here, back on both sides, and then my rug would appear to get bigger as it comes towards me. But I'm going to take it one further than that for you. I'm going to show you something else. We could even use this technique to make hardwood flooring. So I'm going to start with my horizontal lines because those are going to define the boards of the floor. And then I'm going to use convergent because that's the other type of lines that I have here for the floor. So if I want to start adding line segments to make this look like flooring, I'm going to line up to my point and I'm going to pretty much move this like that's attached to the point there and come in and start to drop my lines in. This gives us the illusion that all of this is getting larger as it comes towards us. All right, the last part of this, because now I have my interior, I have my exterior on the other side here. We were looking at it earlier. We're going to start to combine this into this. So what I want you to do for me is I want you to start. We're going to put in, let's use this ruler here. An exterior, remember, we start with the closest object, or the closest face that is directly towards us. So I'm going to start with a rectangle here. My next step from the other side is to bring my convergent lines back with every corner I can without traveling through the object. Guys, the way that I'll grade this is when I look at this, I'm going to figure out where this point is, and I'm going to check every one of these diagonals, because if the diagonals are right, everything else in this picture should be correct. All right, so this is horizontal here. I'm going to put in my horizontal line here. Now, we have a simple rectangular prism here. And what we're going to eventually get into doing, and what you can play around with a little bit if you want to, is we're going to start turning these into actual objects. So I'm going to put a line across here. I'm going to put a line here and here. Then I can go to the point from here. Put in my parallel. Go from the point, from this corner to the point. Put in another parallel line. Ooh, that got crooked. We'll fix that guy here. So then I would erase out everything that I didn't need anymore. Like right here, we have a table. If I wanted to start putting other objects in here, maybe I could start with a square with a rectangle stacked on top of it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing I've been doing, where I'm going to line up to each corner that I can without drawing through my objects and bring back convergent lines. Keeping them light because I might have to do some erasing here pretty soon. All right, with all of these convergent lines, now I'm going to start to look between them. Between this one and this one, it's straight across. So I'm going to do the same thing here, straight across. Between this one and this one, it's vertical. I'm going to go with another vertical line. And then I can just start to kind of cut pieces out of this bottom one here. And this is how we're going to start to get objects within the composition. I got one more right here that has to go straight across because that one is. You can see how this is starting to build up forms, and this is why I want you to learn it. But what I want for this assignment is I want you to have this side complete with all of the labels and the rectangular prisms that we've drawn in here. And then I want you to do an interior using the formula we just discussed and put simple rectangular prisms in there for now. So let's go over here and do one more demo. I'm going to start with simple shapes. Long rectangle. Now my next step is every corner that we can, we're going to draw back to the point. So there's one. There's two. We're not going to see much of this object here on the top because it's close to our eye level. We're going to bring in our parallel to this here, down here. And then I'm going to line up to this corner here because this is still our front and we're coming back from every corner. And I'm going to draw this back. We'll go ahead and connect this guy down. I can put a little vertical line here and turn this into some type of cabinet. These would be convergent as well. And then we would erase all this business out because we would no longer see it. 3 rectangular prisms, exteriors within an interior that has something on each wall space. So side 1 and side 2 is what you'll turn into me. I'll need 2 different pictures. We'll talk about how we're going to build on this from here, but this is the basic concept. Any questions, feel free to give me an email and I will get back to you as quickly as I can and make sure that we get this figured out.